Letters from a Stoic. Selected Volume 1. Seneca's Essential Roman Wisdom on Friendship, Time, Wealth, and the Good Life. Ancient Stoic Philosophy for Modern Men, Leaders, and Builders. By Aurelian Hart. Introduction. In the year 62 AD, an old man sat in a quiet room, far from the noise of the city. His name was Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He had been one of the most powerful men in Rome. He had seen everything: great wealth, high honors, and the terrifying whims of a mad emperor. But at this moment, he wasn't thinking about power. He was thinking about a friend. His friend Lucilius was younger and busy. Lucilius was climbing the ladder of Roman politics, dealing with grumpy bosses and trying to stay ahead of his rivals. He was successful, but he was also stressed. He felt like his life was slipping through his fingers. Seneca saw himself in his younger friend, and he knew that if Lucilius didn't change his way of thinking, he would end up winning a game that wasn't worth playing. Seneca picked up a pen and began to write. He didn't write a textbook, he wrote letters. These letters weren't filled with dry rules or big words that nobody uses. They were honest, raw, and full of practical wisdom. He wrote about how to handle a bad day, how to choose your friends, and how to make sure you aren't just busy, but actually alive. Those letters survived the fall of the Roman Empire. They survived wars, fires, and the passing of thousands of years. They survived because the problems Seneca talked about never went away. We still feel like we are slaves to the clock. We still wonder who our real friends are. We still worry about money, even when we have enough of it. The lesson from the old builder. A few years ago, I met a man named Elias. He was 70 years old and had built several large companies from the ground up. He was wealthy, but that wasn't what made him special. What made him special was his calm. While other leaders were shouting into their phones and drinking their fifth cup of coffee, Elias sat in his garden, listening to the birds. One afternoon, I asked him how he did it. I was a reactionary striver. I felt like I was constantly putting out fires. My calendar was full, but my heart felt empty. I was successful by every measure society cares about, yet I felt like a passenger in my own life. Elias didn't give me a list of apps or a new productivity hack. He handed me a worn-out book. It was a collection of Seneca's letters. Most people spend their lives building a house, Elias told me. They pick the best wood and the finest stone. They make it look perfect from the outside, but they forget to build a person to live inside it. They are masters of the world, but strangers to themselves. He told me that the most important work a man can do happens in the quiet moments of the morning and the honest reflection of the evening. He taught me that philosophy isn't something you study in a dusty library. It is something you use in the middle of a business meeting or a family crisis. It is a toolkit for the soul. Elias showed me that I was time poor because I was giving my hours away to people and tasks that didn't matter. I was a slave to the clock because I hadn't learned how to say no. I was looking for happiness in the next big win, but the win always left me feeling just as hungry as before. The struggle we all face. You might be in that same spot right now. You are doing well. You work hard. People look at you and see a leader, a builder, or a provider. But inside, things feel fragmented. You wake up and immediately check your email. Your heart starts racing before your feet even hit the floor. You spend your day reacting to other people's emergencies. You feel like if you stop moving for even a second, everything you have built will collapse like a house of cards. This is the reactionary striver trap. It is a life of constant noise and digital distraction. It is a life where your value is tied to your output, and your peace is tied to the stock market or your social media feed. You have a vast network of contacts, but you realize you haven't had a deep soul-level conversation in years. You have wealth, but you are afraid of losing it. You have a schedule, but you don't have a life. It's a lonely way to live. You feel like you are winning the war, but losing your soul. You want to be a sovereign architect, someone who owns their time, leads with a moral compass, and remains unshakable, even when the world is in chaos. You want to be the person who can walk into a room and bring calm because you have found it within yourself. The good news is that the path to that life was mapped out 2,000 years ago. Seneca didn't write from a mountaintop. He wrote from the middle of the mess. He was a businessman and a politician. He knew what it was like to be surrounded by people who wanted something from him. He knew what it was like to face a crisis that seemed impossible to solve. A man named Marcus. Marcus Thorne was staring out the window of a first-class cabin on a midnight flight from San Francisco to Chicago. Below him, the lights of the country looked like tiny sparks. But all he could see was the reflection of his own tired face in the glass. Marcus was 42 years old and the CEO of a mid-sized tech company. He had the house in the suburbs, the beautiful wife, and 2 daughters who were growing up way too fast. To the world, Marcus was the ultimate winner. He had just closed a deal that would put his company on the map. But as the plane hummed through the night, Marcus felt a sharp pain in his chest. It wasn't a heart attack, though it felt like one. It was a panic attack. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he had played a full game of soccer with his daughter Sophie without checking his phone. He couldn't remember the last time he and his wife Elena had talked about something other than their schedules. He felt hollow. He felt like a machine that was running out of oil. He had spent 20 years climbing, only to realize he was leaning his ladder against the wrong wall. He was terrified that if he slowed down, he would lose his edge. But he was even more terrified that if he kept going, there would be nothing left of him by the time he reached the top. Reaching into the seat back pocket to find a napkin, his hand brushed against something hard. It was a small battered book left behind by a previous traveler. The cover was plain, and the title was simple, Letters from a Stoic. He opened it to a random page and read a single sentence. We are in the habit of saying that it was not in our power to choose the parents who were allotted to us. But we can choose whose children we would like to be. Marcus didn't know it yet, but that little book was about to change everything. It was the first spark of curiosity in a man who had forgotten how to wonder. The transformation ahead. This book is a guide to that same transformation. It is not about becoming a monk or moving to a cave. It is about being a builder in the modern world while keeping your inner peace intact. By the end of these pages, you will learn how to reclaim your time. You will stop feeling like a slave to the clock and start owning your schedule. You will learn the difference between networking and true friendship, and you will find out how to build alliances that last a lifetime. You will discover how to be a leader who people actually want to follow, not because of your title, but because of your character. You will learn how to handle wealth so that it serves you, rather than you serving it. Most importantly, you will build what the Stoics called an inner citadel. This is a mental sanctuary that remains calm, even when the market is crashing, your company is in crisis, or your personal life is under pressure. You will go from being a person who reacts to the world to a person who shapes it. You will move from temporary wins to building a legacy that actually matters. The wisdom you are about to read isn't based on theories. It is based on the lived experience of a man who survived the most dangerous court in human history, and the modern leaders who have used his words to find their way home. The Roadmap to Sovereignty. We will start by looking at how to choose the people you let into your life. Seneca believed that friendship is the ultimate wealth, but only if you choose wisely. From there, we will tackle the mystery of time. You will see why you have plenty of time, but you are probably wasting most of it on things that don't satisfy you. We will dive into resilience and how to train your mind to handle the worst-case scenario, so that you are never paralyzed by fear again. We will explore the lives of men like Cato the Younger, who showed that physical and mental grit are 2 sides of the same coin. You will learn how to handle catastrophic loss and how to find solitude, even in the middle of a noisy city. We will look at the Nero dilemma, how to lead with integrity when the people around you are losing theirs. We will even talk about the things most people are afraid to mention: wealth, aging, and death. Seneca believed that by facing these things head-on, we take away their power to scare us. We will end by looking at how to build a legacy that lasts for generations. Marcus Thorne's journey is just beginning, As he turns the pages of that old book, he is going to find that the answers to his modern problems were written in a Roman villa long ago. He is going to learn that peace isn't for people who aren't ambitious. Peace is the foundation that makes true ambition possible. The flight is landing. The sun is starting to come up over the Chicago skyline. It is time to stop reacting and start building. The first step is realizing that you don't need more hours in the day. You need a different way to look at the hours you already have. Chapter 1. Mastering the Art of Selective Friendship. If you stand in the center of Rome today, near the ruins of the Forum, you hear 100 languages. Tourists from every corner of the earth crowd the walkways, holding up phones to catch the golden light hitting the broken marble pillars. It is a place of noise, movement, and shallow check-ins. People stand where emperors once stood, but they are mostly worried about their camera angles. In 62 AD, this same patch of ground felt very different. The air was thick with the smell of wood smoke and the sweat of thousands of people packed into narrow streets. But more than the smell, there was a feeling of heavy, invisible weight. This was the heart of an empire ruled by a young man named Nero. He was becoming more unpredictable and dangerous by the day. In this world, a single wrong word to the wrong person could end your life. In a quiet house, not far from the chaos, an old man named Seneca sat with a wax tablet. His hands were likely spotted with age, and his health was failing. He had spent years as one of the most powerful men in Rome, serving as an advisor to the emperor. He was incredibly wealthy, famous, and successful. By every modern standard, Seneca had made it. Yet he was withdrawing. He was tired of the games, the fake smiles, and the constant networking that defined Roman high society. He began writing letters to a younger friend named Lucilius, who was working as a government official in Sicily. Lucilius was ambitious. He was climbing the ladder, much like Seneca once had. He was busy, stressed, and surrounded by people who wanted things from him. One day, Seneca received a letter from Lucilius. The letter had been carried by a messenger, a man Lucilius called his friend. But in the letter, Lucilius warned Seneca not to share too many secrets with this messenger. He didn't fully trust the man. Seneca didn't just write back a quick note. He wrote a lesson that would survive for 2,000 years. He told Lucilius that he was using the word friend all wrong. If you call someone a friend, but you don't trust them as much as you trust yourself, Seneca argued, you are making a huge mistake. You are playing a game of social masks, and that game will eventually leave you empty. The crowd and the void. Lucilius was in a tough spot. As the governor of Sicily, he was a big deal. When he walked down the street, people bowed. When he sat down for dinner, everyone wanted to be near him. He had thousands of contacts, but as he confessed to Seneca, he felt a strange sense of loneliness. He was surrounded by people, yet he felt like he was standing in a void. This is the trap of the high performer. We think that having a large network is the same as having a support system. We confuse being known with being understood. Seneca saw that Lucilius was treating friendship like a business transaction. He was keeping his guard up, even with those he called his inner circle. Seneca's response was blunt. He told Lucilius that he needed to decide if someone was a friend before he let them in. But once that door was open, it had to be open all the way. He explained that most people in Rome were fair-weather friends. They were there for the wine, the parties, and the chance to get a job. The moment the weather turned cold, the moment Nero looked at you with suspicion, those people would vanish like mist in the morning sun. Seneca wanted Lucilius to find something deeper, a philosophical brotherhood. This wasn't about what a person could do for your career. It was about who that person made you become. 2,000 years later, Marcus Thorne sat in his glass-walled office in Chicago, staring at the gray water of the river below. On his desk, 3 monitors glowed with data. His phone buzzed every few seconds with notifications from LinkedIn, Slack, and email. Marcus was the CEO of a logistics tech startup. He had built it from a garage idea into a company worth millions. He was the guy everyone wanted to talk to. His calendar was a solid block of power lunches and strategy sessions. If you looked at his phone, he had over 4,000 contacts. He was a master of the check-in. But 3 nights ago, on a flight back from San Francisco, something had snapped. In the quiet of the first-class cabin, his chest had tightened. He couldn't breathe. His heart felt like a trapped bird beating against his ribs. It was a full-blown panic attack. As he sat there, gasping for air, he looked at his phone. He scrolled through the names: investors, VPs, tech reporters, old business school rivals. He scrolled and realized something terrifying. There wasn't a single person on that list he felt he could call at 2 a.m. to say, "I'm scared, and I don't know why I'm doing this anymore." He was winning at business, but he was starving for a real human connection. He was a reactionary striver, running as fast as he could to keep everyone happy, while his own soul was tucked away in a dark corner. The next day, while cleaning out his briefcase, he found a small, battered book. It was a copy of Seneca's letters. He didn't remember buying it. Maybe it was left by the person who sat in the seat before him on the plane. He opened it to letter 3. He read Seneca's words about the difference between a friend and a person you just know. "Ponder for a long time whether you shall admit a given person to your friendship," Seneca wrote. "But when you have decided to admit him, welcome him with all your heart and soul." Marcus looked at his power networking lunch, scheduled for 12:30 p.m. It was with a guy who wanted Marcus to invest in a new crypto fund. They would talk about synergy and disruption, and they would both lie about how great they were doing. Marcus felt a wave of exhaustion. He realized he didn't have any friends. He only had strategic alliances. The lightest test, better or bitter. Seneca offered a framework for how to choose the people who get to stay in your life. He didn't believe in being a hermit, but he believed in very, very picky. He used a concept that we can call the lightest test. In ancient times, a lightus was a shore or a beach. It was the place where the solid ground met the unpredictable sea. Seneca wanted Lucilius to look at his friends and ask, "Does this person act as solid ground for me, or are they just more waves?" A true friend, in the Stoic sense, is someone who helps you practice virtue. They don't just agree with everything you say. In fact, a real friend is often the person who tells you the hard truth when you are being arrogant or lazy. They are a mirror for your soul. Seneca told Lucilius that there are 2 types of people who are dangerous to your peace of mind. The first is the person who is always complaining. They see the world as a series of disasters. If you spend enough time with them, you will start to see the world that way too. Their gloom is contagious. Seneca warned that even if these people are loyal, their constant negativity will weigh down your spirit. The second is the person who only loves you for your status. These are the people who are there for the CEO Marcus, but wouldn't know what to do with the scared Marcus. They are attracted to your light, but they will flee the moment you enter a shadow. To pass the lightest test, a person has to make you better, not bitter. They have to be someone you can be silent with without feeling awkward. Most importantly, they have to be someone you trust enough to show your working files, the messy, unfinished parts of your life. Why trust is a prerequisite. One of the most radical things Seneca said was that trust isn't something you build slowly over 20 years. He argued that you must do your homework first, but once you decide someone is a friend, you must trust them completely from that moment on. He said you should discuss everything with a friend, but before that, discuss the man himself. This goes against everything we are taught in the modern corporate world. We are told to trust but verify. We are told to keep our cards close to our chest. We are told that it's just business. Seneca realized that this kind of halfway trust is what leads to the hollow feeling Marcus Thorne was experiencing. If you are always verifying, you are never actually connecting. You are still living in a fortress, and even though you might be safe, you are also alone. The Stoics believed that humans are social animals. We were built to work together, like the upper and lower rows of teeth. But for that cooperation to work, there has to be a foundation of total honesty. If you can't tell your friend your mistakes, your fears, and your bad thoughts, then you aren't really friends. You are just 2 people standing near each other. This doesn't mean you should go out and tell your deepest secrets to the barista at the coffee shop. Seneca was very clear. Be slow to choose. Watch how a person treats people who can do nothing for them. Watch how they handle a small setback. Watch if they gossip about others, because if they gossip to you, they will gossip about you. But once they pass the test, open the gates. The Wharton study and the price of silence. Modern science has actually caught up to Seneca's 2,000-year-old wisdom. A famous study conducted at the Wharton School of Business looked at high-stakes collaboration. They wanted to know why some teams succeeded in high-pressure environments while others crumbled. They found that the most successful groups weren't the ones with the highest IQs or the most experience. They were the ones with the highest levels of psychological safety. This is just a fancy way of saying they trusted each other enough to be wrong. They could say, "I don't know," or "I made a mistake," without fear of being judged or punished. In environments where that trust was missing, people spent a huge amount of their mental energy managing impressions. They were so busy trying to look smart and capable that they didn't have enough energy left to actually solve the problems. We see this in the downfall of companies like Theranos. Created a culture where no one was allowed to tell the truth if it was negative. She didn't have friends in her inner circle. She had followers and enforcers. There were no truth tellers. Because there was no real trust, the entire multi-billion-dollar structure was built on a foundation of sand. It eventually collapsed, hurting thousands of people. Seneca saw this same pattern in Nero's court. The emperor was surrounded by people who trusted him only because they were afraid of him. There was no psychological safety. As a result, the leadership of Rome became a theater of the absurd, where everyone was acting and no one was living. Marcus deletes the noise. Back in Chicago, Marcus Thorne looked at his phone again. He felt a strange tightening in his gut, but this time it wasn't a panic attack. It was a realization. He clicked on the calendar invite for his power lunch. He typed a short, polite note saying he couldn't make it. He didn't give a fake excuse. He just said he had a personal matter to attend to. Then he hit delete. He felt a small spark of freedom. He went to his private contacts list. He scrolled past the A-list names. He scrolled past the investors and the tech founders. He stopped at a name he hadn't called in 5 years, David. David had been Marcus's roommate in college. They had spent nights eating cheap pizza and talking about what they wanted to do with their lives. David wasn't a CEO. He was a high school history teacher in a small town in Michigan. He didn't need anything from Marcus. He didn't care about Marcus's Series C funding round or his sleek glass office. When Marcus was starting his company, he had phased out David. He told himself he was too busy. The truth was that David didn't fit the new image Marcus was trying to build. David knew the old Marcus, the one who was messy, who failed his first accounting exam, and who used to play the mandolin badly. Marcus realized that David was exactly the kind of friend Seneca was talking about. He was someone who had seen the working files and liked Marcus anyway. Marcus took a deep breath. His hand shook slightly as he hit the call button. The phone rang 3 times. "Marcus?" David's voice sounded surprised, but warm. "Man, it's been a lifetime. Is everything okay?" Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He looked out at the Chicago skyline, at the thousands of people rushing to meetings they didn't want to go to, and he finally spoke the truth. "Honestly, Dave? No. Everything is not okay. I think I've been winning at the wrong game." There was a pause on the other end. "I hear you," David said quietly. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Marcus didn't look at his monitors. He didn't check his Slack. He sat in his expensive chair and practiced the art of being a human being. He told David about the panic attack. He told him about the fear that he was just a passenger in his own success. He wasn't networking. He was building a bridge back to his own soul. The inner circle audit. If you want to move from being a reactionary striver to a sovereign architect, you have to start with an audit of your inner circle. Seneca didn't want us to be lonely, but he wanted us to be intentional. Think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not the people you follow online, but the people who actually have access to your ears and your heart. Apply the Stoic elitist test to them. The truth factor. Can they tell you that you're being an idiot without you getting defensive? Can you do the same for them? The energy exchange. After spending an hour with them, do you feel more capable of facing the world, or do you feel like you need a nap? The status check. Your wealth and your title tomorrow, would they still be in your contact list? More importantly, would you be in theirs? Seneca told Lucilius that he who is a friend to himself is also a friend to all. This means that the work of friendship starts with you. You have to be the kind of person who is worth trusting. You have to be the person who doesn't gossip, who doesn't judge, and who values virtue over winning. Most people spend their lives trying to be liked. The Stoic spends his life trying to be reliable. When you focus on being a person of character, you naturally start to attract other people of character. You stop needing a network because you have a brotherhood. You stop being a slave to the clock because the time you spend with these people isn't spent, it's invested. The letters between Seneca and Lucilius didn't just help two men in the first century. They created a ripple that has touched some of the greatest leaders in history. When Thomas Jefferson was drafting the ideas that would form the United States, he had Seneca's letters on his shelf. When George Washington was trying to hold a starving army together at Valley Forge, he leaned on the Stoic idea of unshakable friendship and duty. They understood that you cannot build something great alone. You need a small group of people who are committed to the same higher principles. Today, our world is noisier than Seneca's Rome. We have more ways to connect than ever before, yet we are reporting record levels of loneliness. We have friends we've never met, and followers who don't know our last names. The lesson of Seneca's third letter is a call to come back to the standard authors of our own lives. It is a reminder that one true friend is worth more than 10,000 connections. As Marcus Thorne walked out of his office that evening, he didn't check his phone. He walked to the train station with his head up. He saw the sunset reflecting off the glass buildings, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a stranger in his own life. He had begun to be a friend to himself, and he had reached out to a friend who knew the truth. The journey to Stoic wisdom doesn't begin with a meditation retreat or a complicated book. It begins with a single, honest conversation. It begins when you stop being the CEO, the manager, or the striver, and you simply become a man who is willing to trust and be trusted. As Seneca told Lucilius at the end of his letter, I am pointing out to others the right path which I have found late in life when I am weary with wandering. You don't have to wait until you are weary. You can start choosing your standard authors today. You can start building your inner circle not based on what they can do, but on who they are. That is the first step toward reclaiming your time and owning your life. Chapter 2. Why are we always in a hurry? Paulinus sat in one of the grandest offices in the Roman Empire. From his window, he could see the bustle of the city, the dust of the chariots, and the distant masts of ships pulling into the harbor. As the praefectus Annonae, he was the man in charge of the grain supply. This was not just a job. It was the heartbeat of Rome. If Paulinus made a mistake, 1 million people would go hungry. If he mismanaged a shipment from Egypt, riots would tear the city apart. He was respected, wealthy, and had the ear of the emperor. To any outsider, Paulinus was the picture of a man who had arrived. He was the winner of the Roman dream. Inside his chest, however, a different story was unfolding. His heart raced at the sight of every new messenger. He slept in short, fitful bursts, waking up to check ledgers and weather reports. He had spent his entire life climbing the ladder of the civil service, telling himself that once he reached the top, he could finally breathe. But now that he was at the top, the air felt thinner than ever. He was a man who owned everything except his own morning. He was a slave to the clock, a prisoner of the urgent, and he was beginning to realize that he had spent his life building a temple to a god he didn't even believe in. The great misunderstanding of time. Most people go through life complaining that it is too short. We hear it at funerals, at birthday parties, and in the break room of every office. We feel like we are constantly running out of road. We look at the years behind us and wonder where they went. We blame nature for being stingy with our days. We look at the vastness of the